On today's Two on Your Side town hall, as Ukrainians flee from their homeland by the millions, agencies that assist in refugee resettlement here in Western New York are preparing to help some on their way here to Buffalo. Plus, anytime something like this happens in the world, parents often wonder, how do I talk about this with my kids? We will hear from an expert with some tips on what could be certainly a difficult conversation. And before you open the COVID-19 at-home test kit box you recently got in the mail, some poison control centers are cautioning people about a potentially toxic liquid in some kids. It is a case for the Verify team just ahead. And we thank you so much for joining us tonight here on the Town Hall. I'm Kate Welshofer. This is the number to reach out with your comments and questions, 716-849-2220. And we begin tonight with the war between Russia and Ukraine, which continues to intensify. Attacks by Russian troops are now more frequent and more deadly. As the shelling continues, the humanitarian crisis along the border is reaching a frightening level. 2 million refugees have poured into neighboring countries. Millions more are likely on the way. Jay Gray has the latest tonight from the Polish-Ukrainian border. Good evening to you, Jay.
Good evening. Look, we're at the Medyka border crossing. This area really, in essence, the crossroads between the fighting and war in Ukraine and the safety here in Poland. Take a look at what's happening here. All of these people just coming across the border here, refugees from Ukraine, piling onto buses, most of them going to the train station so they can get a train and move either further into Poland and eventually into Europe if that's where they want to go. But I want to show you where everyone's coming from. If you'll take a look down the line here, this is actually the footpath, the walking path between Ukraine and Poland. And so these people, many of them for 2 or 3 days have been walking to get here. Some pulling a suitcase when they can or carrying their things in a backpack. Many moms carrying their kids through what's been bitter cold here, snow in some areas, and all to get here. But once they're here, and you hear this from so many of the people that are making this journey, what next? They may get on a bus, they may get on a train, but for many, where they're going, they don't know the language. They don't have any relatives or friends, and they don't know what's going to happen next. And that's just another one of the horrible circumstances of what's going on in this humanitarian crisis. We have seen the crowds of refugees growing over the past 24 to 48 hours. We expect it to build even more. For now, though, this is the situation along the Poland-Ukraine border. I'm Jay Gray. Back to you.
Jay, thank you. And it's so hard to imagine, but back here at home, the International Institute of Buffalo is one of several groups that helps welcome immigrants and refugees here to our community. Joining us live tonight is Jenny Rizzo-Choi. She is the interim executive director of the Institute. Jenny, I'll just begin here. 2 million people now have left Ukraine. Do you expect any of those people will find their way here to Western New York?
I don't think we'll be getting people anytime soon, as in the coming weeks or months. The resettlement process, as it will take some time to kick into gear, but I think it's very possible, given the number that we've seen fleeing Ukraine, that we could be getting Ukrainian resettlement refugees here within the next year. The UN is saying 2 million today, and they're planning for upwards of 4 million estimated to flee. That's a huge population that's going to need to be relocated, and certainly Europe cannot absorb all of that. So I think it could happen in the next year that we'll see refugees here.
So it will be some time at this point, but something people may not realize is that New York State is already home to the largest Ukrainian population in the United States. What should we know about our Ukrainian community here in Western New York right now? And what kinds of stories are you hearing from people whose loved ones are in this situation right now?
Yeah, there is a sizable Ukrainian community here in Buffalo. A lot of those are immigrants, folks who came here on their own, on student visas, work visas, family sponsorship. I will note, though, that the Institute actually did resettle Ukrainian refugees back in the 80s after the Chernobyl crisis. We did get some refugees in that we served as clients in like 88 and 89. Again, a few years after that explosion happened. And we've been hearing from a lot of them. The Institute's got deep connections with than all the international groups that live in our region. People reaching out, very distressed, people worried, people wanting to donate and help out. We've been asked to participate in some of their efforts for fundraising. I mean, it's just so upsetting to watch what's going on TV right now overseas, and to know that like these folks are in such crisis.
And you certainly see it on television, you see it on social media, and we're familiar with the term city of good neighbors, particularly when it comes to people who have always called this area home. But for the past 4 decades, as you were saying, or so, Buffalo has been this soft place to land for so many refugees who are seeking to leave poverty or conflict in their homelands and wanting to start new lives in the U.S. What has helped give Buffalo that reputation? And for, I would imagine, the many people watching tonight who may not have any idea what it means to be forced to leave the place they've always called home, how important is it to have people like you, like the Institute, to help people? And how have you helped refugees over the years?
Well, the Institute has been welcoming and integrating people for a long time. We've been around for over 100 years, and we've certainly been working with refugees since the 80s when the Refugee Act was put into place. And so we've got populations coming in today from Afghanistan, from Syria, from Congo, Burma. Those are all people who had to flee their homeland and go in search of a place for safety and a better life. And the actual definition of being a refugee is someone who has been persecuted or who fears future persecution on account of something that they can't change about themselves, their race, their nationality, their political opinion, their religion, etc. Those are people who unfortunately cannot go back to their homeland. And Buffalo has been a place that's been welcoming to those people. We've got a diverse community that's always been welcoming. For the last century, we've welcomed in all kinds of immigrant waves, from like the Italians in my background, and the Irish and the Puerto Ricans and the Lithuanians, to today's populations I just mentioned. And that's because we've got available jobs here, we've got affordable housing, we've got a great network of social service centers that can support people, and we've got welcoming neighbors who are willing to give a chance on somebody and help them start a new life here in a place that they can call their home and build their house and put their kids in school and not worry that everything's going to be taken away from them in an instant.
So people have kind of a sense of this, Jenny. I just want to ask you, when you have that first meeting, how does that go? What are some questions that you ask, or what are some things that happen?
When we pick up somebody in an airport, and that's the end of a very long journey for them that sometimes has taken years. They've fled their home country, they've then gone to a neighboring country where they've been in a UN camp, like you're seeing today on the news with the folks in Ukraine. They're in Poland and Hungary, and they're going through weeks and months of not having any stability or knowing what's going to happen. And so when they're finally given their papers and they're cleared for refugee status, and they get to that long journey on an airplane that takes several days to get them to Buffalo, they're welcomed by an International Institute case manager. There's usually a couple staff there with a sign. We bring them home to an apartment that we've set up for them. There's a hot meal that's, with their own ethnic cuisine that they've been looking forward to. And we go through the process and say, look, this is your house. This is how you turn on a stove. This is electricity for the lights. For people who've been living in different transient makeshift places, they may not have had all of that stability and normalcy. And that's what the Institute provides, is that over the course of weeks and months, we give them that support. We orientate them. We help them find jobs. We get their kids into school. We get everybody into ESL classes, and we get them adapted to their new life here. And we are grateful to have these people come and to be able to help them and to have the community welcome them, so that this is a great start for people starting a new chapter.
And Jenny, quickly, we have just under a minute here, but we want to let people know how they can help. We know that there have been supplies and money, but what are maybe some other things that people can do that can be a big help that people might not think of right away?
Sure. I mean, I know there's such an outpouring of people wanting to help those in Ukraine right now, but it's hard to get that type of help over there when they're still overseas. And so what I would suggest is look at supporting the refugees that are here in Buffalo, because there are a lot of them. Buffalo has received in 600 people from Afghanistan just in the last 4 months alone. And we've also had lots of other people coming in from Syria, Congo, Iraq, Burma, etc. And the way to get involved is to contact the Institute and the other agencies that support these refugees to see how you can volunteer. You can set up an apartment for a refugee family. You can volunteer to become a mentor mentor and teach somebody ESL, and you don't even have to do all of that in person. You can do it on Zoom and train to be one of those mentors. Or you can donate money, because that's also very helpful, and donate in-kind goods, because we're always collecting things to set up new apartments. So many ways to get involved, to have your family, your kids, your Girl Scout troop, your church group, all get involved and support and welcome somebody and make them feel like Buffalo is the city of good neighbors that we are.
We so appreciate you helping us understand this experience. We've been joined tonight by Jenny Rizzo-Choi. She's the interim executive director of the International Institute of Buffalo. Jenny, thank you again for your time tonight.
Thank you for having me.
And we know that this information and the images coming out of Ukraine are unsettling for adults and certainly for children. Reporter Alex Haskell spoke with a clinical psychologist in Maine, Dr. Denise Vaught. She says if parents are unsure how to bring up the war with their child, begin by inviting them to talk about it.
Finding ways to touch base and answer questions depending on the kid's age can really allow them to feel safe.
From explosions we see on TV to the raw human emotions popping up even on our smaller screens, the war in Ukraine is in our homes and our hands. Our children are seeing it too.
That could be something that could be incredibly anxiety-provoking or overwhelming.
That's why Dr. Vaught recommends parents have a conversation with their children at a time and place that's best for them.
No matter what the age of the child, we can increase their feelings of safety by increasing their sense of control.
It's a conversation Don Noble and his family know well.
It's been a very interesting sort of topic.
Noble and his wife, they have 4 kids. Their grandparents are in Ukraine, surviving in the country's capital, Kyiv. Noble's children are all handling the situation differently. Owen is 9.
He's really confused at the idea of what war means. For him, it's when is Captain America going to show up and save grandma and grandpa?
For the 11 and 13-year-olds, minimizing time online has been a priority.
Within a quick Google search, they're able to see the devastation.
And when questions come up about the crisis, Noble does his best to answer them.
Sometimes you have to kind of boil it down so that it's not as like a Wikipedia page, for example, but here's this lady, here's this guy, and here's kind of what their problems are. And what do you think about them?
Dr. Vaught says when talking to your children, it's important for them to know, although significant, this conflict is far away.
Instead of maybe recognizing, oh wow, I feel really sad because this is happening to someone else, instead they're really focusing it on themselves. This is really scary. What if this happens to me?
And Dr. Vaught says that parents can help explain this conflict is far away by using visuals like a map. She also says that parents should try to manage their own emotions during that conversation.